Here's Mark and Suzanne revolutionizing radio.
Good morning. It is Friday, July 6th. Welcome to another episode of the Mark and Suzanne show. I can't talk very well this morning. We could be in some trouble. My name is Mark. Suzanne is my co-host. She's not here today. She's in the hospital with her son, actually, having surgery. It was a planned surgery, so you can rest assured that it sounds like from what she's told me this morning, everything is going smoothly. We've got another jam-packed show here for you folks as we continue to revolutionize radio. And let me assure you, radio needs to be revolutionized. We're tired of the status quo, and I suspect you're tuning in because you're tired of the status quo. Well, buckle in. You're going to hear a lot of non-status quo talk today. But in Suzanne's absence, we are blessed to be joined by the producer extraordinaire and the owner of the network, Jeff Johnson. Jeff, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well now that we fixed the strange, mysterious change in program. I don't know how it changed because I never touched it. So it just,
isn't that funny?
Nothing makes, this radio. I'm surprised every time it works.
I tell you what, I've been in radio a long time, Jeff, and I can remember times sitting in the studio back in Maryland, and you're watching the countdown clock. You know it's coming up to 3 minutes and 7 seconds. 3 minutes and 7 seconds, and you're about to go live. And supposedly the program's working and you're live, but you hear this strange beeping noise in the back behind you, and you realize, oh no, we are not live. And then all the bells go off in the studio, and the engineers come running in, and they're pressing buttons trying to figure out, how are we not live right now? And then usually it's some button somebody pushed, and they press the button, and back, boom, we're live. So that's just the nature of this game, whether it's a big studio that I was in back in Maryland or here today. Mistakes happen, and that's just the nature. Like you said, Jeff, I think you got it right. We're surprised when this works.
Sometimes, we're not professionals. This is, Mark and I were discussing this prior to the show. And, folks, here at Cerberus, we, a year and a half ago, I have never, ever done radio, ever. And never been sat behind these computers and produced a show. In a year and a half, it's really funny. If you listen to Daniel and my first show, and it's out there somewhere, folks, I'm not gonna find it for you. But if you listen to it, you will laugh because it is so awful. But here it is, a year and a half, almost 2 years later, and outside of the occasional blip where the software is messed up, it goes off pretty much every show without a hitch. And you know what? I'm just proud to, as an amateur, as a beginner to all this, it actually works. And that's, like I said, when it goes off without a hitch, I'm happy as all get out.
Well, listen, I'm totally impressed with what you've done. Jeff and I have known each other for a couple of years now, and I remember when Jeff first kind of got the bug of going into radio, and I remember you sitting on your couch broadcasting radio from your couch. Do you remember those days when you first started?
Oh yeah, and that should be told. And again, because of the technical issues, there is no YouTube today. So if you're looking for YouTube, I'm trying to get online right now to make sure everyone knows that. Because I had a shutdown, it won't restart now. It's done. So we're on Radio Co. It's live. So I'm going to get online here in just a second when we have a break. But, eventually what the plan is to, actually have a real curtain and make it look real professional, look like a real studio. And you know what? Again, I do this as the money comes in. And I've been investing the money in Radio Co. and in SoundCloud. Again, if you want to find old shows, look on SoundCloud. We add more and more all the time. And when this show is done, it'll end up on there eventually today. It might be tonight. But, I put the money into where people can hear the shows. Making myself look pretty, which is not going to happen, is not a big deal. It's not a big thing for me. So... Anyway,
hey, brother, it ain't working that good. I'm just kidding. but it ain't working great for me either. So now hats off to what you guys have done over there, what you've done personally, Jeff. You are part of this growing number of people that are deciding to take action, deciding to do something. And so you're to be commended. We do have a call-in line today if you want to participate in the show. That number is 717-467-1736. 717-467-1736. If you'd like to join the show today, you're welcome to do that. Jeff will screen the calls, and we'll get you right on the air, because we got a lot of ground to cover today. There's a lot going on out there, as you all know. But I wanted to begin first with kind of some high-level discussion about why we're even doing this. What, there's obviously Jeff works late nights. He could be sleeping in today, but he's up producing a show. There's things that I could be doing right now myself, but we feel this urge, this kind of drive, if you will. I suspect you're listening because you feel the same thing, or you're watching this because you feel the same way, that we've got to do something. We actually have to engage this fight. Now, here's what I have run across in my nearly a decade of doing this now. There's still a massive knowledge gap out there. There's still just tons of people that don't really understand that we actually can take back power, that we are not slaves to a new king. And this is what has kind of somehow gotten into our psyche as a group of people. Now, to be sure and to be honest about it, there is a group of people out there. They're typically progressive leftists that want to be kings. They actually want to grow a large government, and they want to control people. So I'm not Pollyannish about this. I'm not naive that this is a fight and that there is a large group of people that actually do want to take power and actually do want to control things. I totally get that. But there's this growing other group of people that say, I don't want a king. And I suspect you're part of that. Now, obviously, in 1776, that made a lot more sense. And a few days ago, as a union of 50 separate and sovereign states, we celebrated independence. However, as we probably all know, most people view July 4th as a day to grill hot dogs and hamburgers and go out and watch some fireworks. And of course, when we think that way about this, we actually dishonor what really happened from July 2nd through 1783. Thousands and thousands of men lost their lives fighting for actual freedom, for independence from the king. To them, a king made a lot of sense because it was King George. It was one person. He was across the pond. He sat on a throne. He was issuing edicts. It was Parliament that was doing nothing to represent the interests of the colonies as this new American identity began to emerge. People began to identify themselves as colonists or people of the Americas. And so to them, it made clear sense when the agitators, when the Sam Adams, when the Thomas Jeffersons, when the Patrick Henrys began to agitate and say, we don't want a king. We don't want him telling us what to do. To them, it made a lot of sense because there was one single solitary king. He was on a lot of different coin and stamps and all sorts of things. You saw his picture everywhere. So everybody knew who he was. There was no confusion about it. And so when the founders had the benefit of agitating, they were able to agitate towards that king. Well, translate that into the 21st century United States, plural, of America. We don't have a king. We don't have one solitary king who sits on a throne and issues edicts or orders Parliament to do anything. We don't have that here. But, and this is key, you really got to get this. We do have a kind of a king. We do have a oligarchical or monarchical structure in Washington, D.C. Yes, it's comprised of 535 or 45 megalomaniacs. But make no mistake about it, folks. They are issuing edicts, and your job is to obey them. But this network, this show, Jeff's show, gives evidence that there's a growing number of people that are saying, I don't want to obey that. I think it's a really bad idea. But they don't know what to do. This is the great gulf that we have right now. We have this group of people out here who say, I want to not obey an unrighteous, ungodly, evil ruling, but I don't know how to do it. How do we do it? Because, of course, we all have memories of the war between the states or the war of northern aggression, that when someone disobeyed the person who thought he was a king, a lot of people die. And I can't tell you, Jeff, you probably hear this all the time too. I cannot tell you how many times I hear the knee-jerk reaction when you start talking about state sovereignty, people saying, well, they're just going to kill us. You know, Trump's going to send in the 4th Infantry Division and start bombing us. Jeff, you hear this a lot, right?
Yes, we hear this all the time when we discuss limited government. Well, or even this whole thing with, I know you saw the article the other day about California splitting into 3. You see it there all the time. Oh, well, this was settled. Lincoln settled this in the Civil War. No. Lincoln just used force to force these southern states back into the voluntary union. Did he end natural rights? I mean, if he did, then Jefferson had it all wrong in the Declaration of Independence, and why in the heck did we have the Independence Day? You know, it was unnecessary. The other day when I was discussing this on my show, I went and looked for a specific quote, and I read, and I never read the entire quote. It's from Thomas Paine in Common Sense of the Origin and Design of Government in General, with concise remarks on the English Constitution. That's the one it's from. That long sentence there. Society in every state is a blessing. But government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil. In its worst state, an intolerable one. For when we suffer, we are exposed to the same miseries by a government, which we might expect in a country without government. Our calamity is heightened by reflecting that we furnish the means by which we suffer. You know, I was just blown away by that. And you know what? When we discuss this whole thing, well, he's going to send in the army to kill you. Well, you know what? We're furnishing the means by which they accomplish that.
Yep. Now, this is a great challenge for people to get their minds around. But yet, I will say this. And Jeff, you probably see this as well. We're making inroads because there's something intuitive. Don Livingston talks about it's in our DNA. It's in our American DNA, if you will. There's something intuitive about the problem we have with big government. Now, we may not be able to know exactly what to do about it right now. This show and other shows are going to be pushing and giving you solutions to how to do this. We had a candidate running here in Oklahoma who made it very clear how he was going to reassert state sovereignty. But there's more and more people, because it's intuitive to the people that are free thinking, that want to be free, to understand that the opponent to freedom is what Thomas Paine wrote about. It's government. It is, at its best, a necessary element of our lives. At its best. At its worst, it will murder you. It will kill you. Now, stop and think about that. We in this country, especially, and Jeff, this is the great difficulty, isn't it? The people we want to reach, the conservatives, the people who should be, who sense this DNA in them, that we should be free, are often the people that are the most resistant to state sovereignty, to reclaiming power from who? From government. It's a real conflict, because the left has no conflict like that. The left says, hey, we're going to grow government and you're going to get more of it. And we are going to do more to you. We are going to control. They are the most honest people in politics that I know, the left, because they say, we get government, you're getting more of it. And we're going to tell you what to do. And you're going to obey us, or we will murder you. We will murder you if you don't. The left is very clear about their agenda, what they want to do. On the other hand, conservatives and conservative Christians kind of have it all jumbled together, and it's all the jumbled mess of the Constitution's this divine document, and if they would just obey the Constitution, then none of this would be happening, and there's just no clear focus like the left has. Again, the left, we get control of government, you're getting more of it because we like government. The left says we like it because, like all good socialist communists, they understand that government is a force. And they're perfectly comfortable. You need to understand this fight you're in. The left is perfectly comfortable with murdering large numbers of people to accomplish their goal. They will do that. They don't have this moral problem with murder because they are worshipers of government and government force and this stupid utopian idea that they have. The right is unfortunately very discombobulated on this, and they get all these concepts of Jefferson and the Constitution. They get all jumbled together in their head, and they can't really figure out what do we let go and what do we keep. And it's really hard. And that's what this show is about. That's what Jeff does. That's what other people and writers are doing now. They're bringing some clarity to what do you do. Payne's got this right. Government at its best is a necessary evil. Now, as Christians, because of Romans 13, we don't like to say that because we don't like to think that God created something evil. And that's not at all really what Payne is saying. Government is a necessary component of organizing society. But here's the reality, because don't make no mistake about it. There is going to be government. To my anarchist friends, you are going to create government. You're just going to call it something different. But make no mistake about it, there's going to be something called government that helps organize the society. You can go back to the Native American tribes, and you can find this feature. Why do they have tribal elders or tribal councils? Why when somebody murdered, if you were an Iroquois, I think it was Iroquois, no, the Creek. If you were the Creek and you murdered somebody, you were brought before a tribal council, and they determined whether you were going to live or die. Folks, that's government. Now, I don't think the tribal chieftain said, we are a government and we have a written constitution here. But everybody in that tribe understood there's government here. There's this organizing authority that keeps these natural fallen tendencies of man in check, i.e., you just can't murder somebody because you want to. Now, in other tribes, in Native American tribes, the punishment for murder was their murderer's family had to compensate the murdered the victim. It was different, but make no mistake about it. There were organizing principles even in these kind of nomadic tribes. They would still form government. So you're going to, unless you're living on an island somewhere, and boy, believe me, there's days I wish I could just take my family into one of those rocks that are popping up out there in the Pacific Ocean from exploding volcanoes underneath. I'd happily take that at times from this, though I don't want to give up my air conditioning and internet. So I don't know. It's kind of a moral conundrum for me. Do I want to live on an island or not? If you live on an island, then you are in a state of nature. You are the king. That's it. You can make all the shots. But guess what? With very few exceptions, none of us live on an island. We live together. And as soon as you live together, you're going to form some kind of government. I'm telling you, it's just going to happen. Now the question becomes, what kind of government do you want? How big of a government do you want? The left is going to say, we want totalitarian control. You give us government, we're giving more to you. Supposedly, on the right, we say, we don't want very much government. We identify with Jefferson, that we want tiny government. Well, I think when we use terms that are not clear and defined, this is what causes some of the confusion, Jeff. I really think that it's when we don't use descriptive terms and we use general terms like limited government. What does that really mean? What does that mean to you, Jeff?
Well, if I were to go by what most people are saying, that would mean that we have somehow less in Washington, D.C. But what it means to me is that we have government as small as possible and as local as possible. So even at the state level, I don't want much power at the state. I want it all residing in my county with guys that I live next door to, not people that live in Pittsburgh or Philadelphia or Harrisburg or wherever it is here in Pennsylvania. Likewise for you in Oklahoma, from other places. You want it as close to you as you can possibly get. That to me is limited government.
Yes, and so, and I'd be curious, by the way, you can call the program anytime you like, 717-467-1736. That's 717-467-1736. I'd be curious to hear what the listeners, if they so choose, would define as limited government. I'm going to tell you what I believe is limited government. It kind of runs along with what Jess said. I have just a little bit of further clarification of what I mean by limited government. Number one, and see, this is why I love radio, because I get to say what I want to say, and then I can argue about it on Facebook later, because people will say, what? You can't. So, number one, I'm going to be crystal clear. There will be no ambiguity with the Kreslins, with Mark Kreslins, giving you his idea of limited government. Here it is. Buckle in. Zero legislature. None. Never. I would never, ever again empower a legislature. Now, stop and think about why. Well, Kreslins, how can you say that? We're supposed to have three branches of government. David Barton has told us that's from God, Isaiah 33:22. Kreslins, are you sinning about, are you just wanting to violate God's word? Is that what you're wanting to do? And of course, I don't want to violate God's word, but Isaiah 33:22 has nothing to do with three branches of government. We'll talk about that in some other show. But I will tell you this. I think the legislature has been an utter disaster. Now, let me explain why. What do we call, what's some common parlance for legislators? What's another word we use to describe who they are? Don't we call them lawmakers? So now think about this for a minute. My name is John Smith, and I'm running for the legislature. I'm going to run as a representative of the people. Now, what does John Smith think about his job when he's elected to the legislature? He's to be a lawmaker. So what does John Smith do? Well, my first order is going to be to write Law 1, and then Law 2, and then Law 3, and then Law 4, and see if I can't get it passed through the legislature and it becomes law. Well, folks, the thing that is strangling us right now are laws, too many of them, like too many of them to the order of a million magnitude, if that's actually a legitimate math term. I don't know that it is, but if not, you can let me know. We have so many laws, as we've all heard from time to time from various political commentators. We have so many laws right now that you're violating one every single day. I have said many times over the years, I safely speed every single day. There is no day of the week I don't safely speed. Now, why do I use that term? Because there's a law that said if I go over 55, I am breaking that law. I do it every single day. There is no day that I can remember here recently that at some point when I'm on the road, I am not breaking that law because it's a stupid law. That's just one. Seatbelts. You've heard me talk about seatbelts forever. I am breaking the law because I get on in my car. I'm going to get in my car here in about an hour and drive to Lowe's, and I'm not going to put my seatbelt on. In fact, I purchased a seatbelt buckle. I call it my tyranny avoidance device. It's without the strap. I can plug it in the seatbelt receptacle, so I don't have to hear that incessant beeping, because the United States Department of Transportation ordered car makers to start putting warning signals in cars when you don't have your seatbelt on. So, Smart Mark found a way around it. On the Honda models, you can't disable it. But I figured out a way to avoid tyranny controlling me. I went to the junkyard and got myself, or a friend of mine got me one of those buckles. And now I slide that baby in, and I don't have to hear that, and I can drive serenely down the roads, breaking the speed limit without that seatbelt on. Now, people can call, Crescent, are you so stupid that you won't put the seatbelt on? Well, yeah, maybe I am. I grew up in a time where there were no seatbelts. I remember when the first seatbelts came out, my father tucked them underneath the seat. He hated them too. So I just grew up in a time where we didn't have them and nobody wore them. And I don't want to wear them now. I'm too fat anyways. So, but that's a law. Somebody went to the legislature and said, let me see my pen. You will wear a seatbelt or be subject to a $25 fine. Can I get the yays and nays on that? Yays and nays came up yay. Let's send it to the governor. Governor signs it. Boom. It's a law. You are now violating it when you don't wear it. See, folks, that's just two minor examples. There are thousands of laws and thousands of regulations on the books that make you a lawbreaker every single day. And the only reason it doesn't have an effect on you right now is because you haven't been caught. But make no mistake about it. You get it. You could every day run into enforcement. And that could change your life. Now, when I get pulled over, which I have fairly, I shouldn't say regularly, but enough times to know the pain of not wearing my seatbelt. Every time I get pulled over, it's a $25 fine. Now, there's no points and it doesn't affect my insurance. They'll give them time. They'll probably figure out a way to do that. But for right now, all I get is a 20. So I feel the pain of the legislature. Go right back to my original point. This is why I hate legislatures now. That's what they do all day. They write laws. So in Mark's form of government, zero legislature. None. They're not even there. There's no building for them to go sit in. There's no legislative aides to help them research the history of other countries that do these kinds of regulations and laws. There's none of that. It's all gone. Secondly, I would never, ever empower a executive branch again. I think it's been a disaster. Let's think about the executive branch in the supposed federal government. These guys who get this office, they start going to war. Oh, we've got the War Powers Act. We're going on offensive military operations. We can do it under the War Powers Act because somebody threatened us, or we think we're at least going to promote that somebody threatened us. The executive branch begins to act like a monarch. Now, they fortunately have some limits to them. And at the state level, depending on the state you live in, they can have a very weak executive or a rather strong executive. But either way it is, any way around it, I don't want an executive executing the stupid laws that come out of the legislature. So you've heard me very clear. I've been very clear when I talk about limited government. I don't want a legislature, and I don't want an executive. Now, I do want courts, but not for the purpose we have them. I want courts to adjudicate contract disputes. Okay, there's an argument. Company A says Company B owes me something or some service, and they can't agree. I am for a third-party arbitrator coming in and using something resembling force to say, B, pay A. And you're going to do it, and if you don't do it, I'm going to authorize A to go to your bank and get that money because you violated the contract. I've read the contract. The contract's very explicit about various responsibilities of each party. And A, you violated B, B, pay, or whatever, however I said it. I may have said it backwards there, but you get the point. I'm for a judge, some kind of arbitrator saying, you're in violation of that contract. You signed that contract. You know how many things we do by contract? We do a ton of things. Go buy a baseball ticket. you're signing a contract when you buy that ticket, because you get smashed in the face with a baseball. They waive any liability. They say, it's a known risk that you're sitting there on that third baseline, and most right-handed hitters can pull that ball down that third baseline pretty fast. And so if you take one in the face, you knew that coming in here. We're waiving ourselves a liability here. You can't get after us. You accepted terms of a contract. You accept terms of a contract when you buy an airline ticket. We exchange via contract all the time. And on big deals between companies, they have contracts that are this tall, and they hire 10 attorneys to read every sentence of that contract, and then they fight over commas and colons and all this stuff. Well, a well-trained judge should be able to sit down, examine the contract, and say, Company A, you pay Company B. It's in the contract. And I'm going to force you to do it. I'm going to give them an order. They can go to the bank and take the money back. So I'm for courts in that context. I'm for courts when bad guys who rape, murder, and plunder do so can be exiled into prison away from the community because they're harming the community. I'm for judges doing that. And that's it. Everything else is done. Number one, not much else actually has to be done. And I want to give you the perfect why I can prove my point on this every time. Today, once the show is over here, I'm going to get in my vehicle and I'm going to travel to Lowe's. And in there, I'm going to walk over and I'm going to find a new, what do they call those contraptions that go in the toilet to let the flap come up and down? I forgot what it's called. You know what I'm talking about. I have to change that out. Stop laughing, Jeff. I can't remember the name. Give me a break. Can you remember the name?
No, I can't. That's why I'm laughing.
It's one of the dangers of video. We can actually see each other. So I'm going to go buy one, and it's going to be what I need. And I'm going to walk up to the cash register, and I'm going to give them the $18 it costs. And that cashier is likely going to say, hi, how you doing today? And I'm going to say, oh, just great. And how are you doing? They're going to say, pretty fine. I'm working, blah, blah. You're going to have a little chit chat. I'm going to give them my money. They're going to give me my product. I'm walking out the door. That's a voluntary transaction. We didn't need government to make that happen at all. That's just naturally going to happen because I need one of those contraptions for my toilet, and Lowe's has one. I'm going to voluntarily exchange money for a good that I need. And the government did not make that transaction happen. In fact, the only person that can mess up that transaction, guess who? Government. They're the one. I mean, we all have those new stupid gas cans, right? They're just about impossible to use. I have spilled more gallons of gas, I think, than I've gotten into the tanks that I need to when I use those stupid things. So I go to my local hardware store and I say, hey, you don't have any of those old nozzles, do you? Remember the old ones growing up that were just, you'd bend and they'd go right in and you could pour stuff in there? Well, guess who screwed that whole thing up? Government. When I was younger and mowed lawns, I poured hundreds of gallons of gasoline through those nozzles my entire life. And yeah, you might drip a little bit here and there, but it was sure easier in those stupid things. You got to press that yellow bar and then you hope you get it forced in there right. And you can't, if you don't stop it fast enough, if gas starts gushing out. Who screwed that up? Was it Lowe's? Did Lowe's just say, you know what, we're going to ruin our customer base here. Hey, engineers, go on back there and take the gas can off there, and let's make it just as difficult as we can to use it. And let's see if the stupid American public will buy it. Was it Lowe's or Home Depot that did that? No, it was government. So who could have possibly impeded my transaction? Who could possibly impede my transaction today with Lowe's? The only entity out there? Because Lowe's wants me to buy that product. They bought it at wholesale for $9. They're selling it to me for $18. They put it up on the rack there so I can see it. And I can say, oh, that's what I need. I take it down, walk to the cash register, and pay for it. Lowe's has an incentive for me to come in there and buy it. The only person that can screw that transaction up is government. So we actually don't need as much government as we think we do. Or more importantly, Jeff, I'll be curious to hear what you think about this. What we've been trained to think we need. And isn't that really the problem? We've been indoctrinated.
Yes, it is. And you know what's really interesting about this? Because I've had this very discussion on Facebook. Facebook's where everyone goes to be offended. So I've had this very conversation on there about what are conservatives actually conserving? Because in reality, everyone thinks, conservatives, they're for limited government. No. It's the red team versus the blue team. The conservatives today, all they got to do, I saw it again, we need to make sure we vote for Republicans so the Democrats don't get control of the House. Well, or the Senate. Well, does it really matter? I mean, they're both. I've used this analogy many times, and every time I say it, it holds more true than it did the day before. They're two sides of the same coin. You got the Republican Marxists, you got the Democrat Marxists. They're the same coin, just flip the coin. So here we are. We got people sitting here conserving their brand of big government. That's what it comes down to. You got the Republicans. We got to make sure that this Raytheon and Boeing and McDonnell Douglas get their big bucks because we got to bomb the world. And then you got the Democrats on the other side going, well, we got to make sure we have socialized medicine so we give away money to this constituent group. We need to have housing so we can give it away to this constituent group. They both are big government. They both have their constituent group that they got to give money they steal from us to. It really does not make a difference. And again, I agree with your legislature thing because we're going to go a little side on something that it affects me because I just got it in the mail. I got my annual extortion demand from the county. I must now, and you're going to love this one. I get two, that have to be paid in August. One is the property tax. It's the property extortion. I must pay them, or they're going to send guys with guns to force me out of the property that I supposedly own. So if the mafia does that, that's extortion. But somehow, because it's legislatures that do it, they legislate law, it's all of a sudden now it's legal. Okay, we can extort you all we want. The second one, you're going to love this one, Mark. This is the one that it just burns me. It burns me to pay either of them, but this one I hate. It's called the per capita tax, and it's an occupation per capita tax.
Really?
So I get to pay, number one, because I'm alive, per capita. I get to pay because I'm a living, breathing human being. Second, I get to pay because I actually produce something. I actually go to work. A per capita occupation tax. Oh my gosh.
Good.
So I get extorted every year because I'm a living, breathing human being and I get to go to work by legislature. So yes, I agree with you.
I'm telling you, folks, you hear that story? This is why we don't need government as much as we've been trained to believe we do. You see, the government has been very clever. They have trained us to believe that without them, this is a very Thomas Hobbesian idea, by the way, that without them in a state of nature, we're going to steal from each other. And we have been taught and trained to believe that if they weren't there, we will just go to war with each other and take each other's property. Well, when they create that kind of dynamic, they empower themselves to say, we are going to rule you now. We actually are going to rule you. And we're going to do it under these clever ideas of a 3 branches of government. But make no mistake about it, that lawmaking body, that legislature, we're writing laws. We are going to write them. And you are going to obey them. And if you don't obey them, at worst, we will murder you. At best, we'll just take your property. So Jeff doesn't pay his occupation tax or his property tax, like he alluded to a few moments ago. He doesn't really own his property. Try not paying your property tax. And in this case, try not paying your occupation tax. Government is going to take that from you. And you're going to stand there and you're going to have a choice to make when the sheriff comes and says, Mr. Johnson, you have to leave your home now, but it's my home. I paid for it. Yes, technically it is, but technically you are in violation of a law, and you have broken that law. You refuse to comply with that law, and so now we're going to take that home from you. But it's my home. I paid a mortgage for 25 years, and I don't have a mortgage anymore. I own it. No, you really don't own it. You own the right to think you own a house, but you refuse to pay your property tax, so we are going to take it from you now. Now, folks, just stop and think about that exchange. There's Jeff at his doorstep. There's Sheriff Jones. He's there with a gun on his side, maybe some deputies behind him because they're a little worried about Jeff. And they're going to tell Jeff, leave your home that you paid for. Is this the government you want? And my guess is everybody in the listening audience would say, absolutely not. But folks, that's what we've been trained to believe is the way this government works here. Now, come along here in 2008, 2009, there's the emergence of the Tea Party. People begin to get a little bit ruffled about the government. Now, of course, it's because Obama's the president and the whatchamacallit, Democrats have the House and the Senate. And that right-left paradigm shows up. The reason we're agitated is because the Democrats are in charge. No, you should be agitated because the Republicans or the Democrats are in charge. Because as Jeff properly pointed out, they are two sides of the same coin. They're the same. It's just their constituent groups that they appeal to is the difference. That's all. But make no mistake about it, they intend to hose you. And until enough people arrive at a point where they want to be free from their king, just like they did in 1776, when they wanted to be free of the king across the pond, until enough people get to that point, they're going to continue to be able to take your property from you. They're going to continue to legally sanction the murder of 1 million babies a year. In our state here in Oklahoma, 5,000 a year. They're going to continue to take your property until you get this square in your mind that we don't need government like we have it, until you can really jettison that thought and even add some specificity to what you think government should be, like I just did. Until you get there and until enough of us get there, it's going to be hard to change anything, folks. And we're going to continue to vote and hope and then cope with the reality that nothing changed. We went to the polls excited once again. Oh, this time it's going to work. We got the right team in this time. And so you vote and you're filled with hope. Oh, this time it's going to work. And then a few months later, after your team got in charge, you realize nothing has changed. And so then you have to go into your normal coping, which is the next time things will change. Well, folks, until you really blow up the philosophy in your mind, until you're willing to let go of what you believe should be and entertain new ideas, nothing really changes. If I need to drop 40 pounds, if I think I can do that by keep going to McDonald's and just ordering their wrap, but eat as much as I normally do, am I really going to lose 40 pounds? No. I actually have to change my thinking about McDonald's. I have to go to Cool Greens and eat their stupid salads. Or I have to just stop eating as much. But if I do that, I'll actually see change. I'll see it. I'll stand in front of the mirror on a scale and say, wow, I dropped 20 pounds because I changed my thinking. It's no different than the same for government, folks. You've got to change your thinking. There's nothing sacrosanct about three branches of government. There's nothing particularly superior about the idea. In fact, the record here would show it's a totally inferior idea. It's a bad idea. They can take Jeff's home. They can take your home. Try and get crosswise with the government and see who wins. When I don't put my seatbelt on, and I try, here's what I do. When I'm driving down the road and I don't have my seatbelt on, and I see an Edmond police or sheriff or something, I put my hand up like this because I know they can see the strap across my shirt, especially if I'm wearing a white shirt. That's how I've gotten caught before, usually in white shirts, because the strap, it's not a contrast there. So if I wearing a dark shirt, I put my hand up like this just to block his view of the place where the strap goes across my chest. I do clever things to try to stop getting raided for $25. This is the life we are living in now because we refuse to change our thinking about government. It can be as trivial as a $25 seatbelt ticket all the way to somebody showing up at your door and saying, we're taking your house from you. But heretofore, what has been the natural response of people? Compliance. Most people comply. Most people will pay their property taxes because they don't want to lose their house. But down deep in their psyche, they know I can lose my house. They can take it from me. Folks, is that the kind of government you want? Do you want a government in your state? Do you want a government that can, by a stroke of a pen, authorize the wholesale slaughter of 60 million babies in the womb? Is that a legitimate government? Is that a moral government? Is that something you actually want to cheer and celebrate on, say, Constitution Day, September 17th? It's being done under that. You can argue all you want that it's not constitutional. Doesn't matter. You can make all those arguments you want. 1 million babies in Oklahoma, 20 babies are going to die today with people standing up, but that's not in the Constitution. Folks, this is, back to Jeff's show, paradigm shift. We are in a need of a paradigm shift. We have to change our thinking on this. Stop thinking there's something divine or sacrosanct about 3 branches of government. There's not. Stop thinking there's something particularly great about a legislature. There's not. It's actually, I can demonstrate it's a very bad idea. It's a playground of the devil, if you ask me. They get up there, you go vote for them, you turn your political activism off after you cast your vote. They get to work. They get to work. We're writing laws. We're going to control you more. We're going to take more from you. There's nothing particularly divine or sacrosanct about the legislature. There's nothing particularly divine or sacrosanct about the executive branch. There's nothing divine about judges. I gravitate towards that, though I could be talked out of it. I'm not married to the idea. I think limited government means almost no government, and allow voluntary transactions to happen like they normally will every single day. Jeff, have you ever gone to a Starbucks, walked in, let's say McDonald's. Have you ever gone to McDonald's, walked in and said, phew, I am sure glad government is here, because if not, I'm going to feel the urge to take that quarter pounder for free, or they may feel the urge behind the counter to reach around and take my politics. But thank goodness government is here. It's stopping us from doing it. Have you ever said that?
No, I've never said that.
Of course. But isn't that really what have been subtly trained to think? That without government, we're going to clash and rob and steal each other, and the only reason we don't is because we have government shepherding us. Now, we may not have that exact thought, but our actions betray that, because we refuse to stop government that does overtly bad things to us, like threatening to take your home if you don't pay some property tax. Because they've done such a good job at inculcating us, indoctrinating us, we fear the government. And don't say you don't. The first step to fixing this is to admit you are afraid of this thing, because you do actually know it can hurt you right now. This is why we need hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people to begin to think through these ideas. Don't look for solutions where solutions can't be found. For example, right now, the pro-life community is beside itself with excitement thinking about the Supreme Court battle coming up. Apparently, Trump has narrowed it down to 3 people he's going to pick. 2 of them are Bush appointees, and one is some belongs to some weird kind of, I shouldn't say weird, people of praise. It's a very strict Christian community, and she's getting beat up for that. I would prefer her, but regardless of that, people are beside themselves excited about the possibility that Roe versus Wade may be overturned. Now, number one, unless she's appointed, it ain't going to be overturned, folks. And so you better think of other ways to deal with this Holocaust. If she is appointed and somehow they muster it'll be a 5-4 decision. Make no mistake about it. It's not going to be a 7-3, 8-2, 9-1 decision. It's going to be a 5-4 decision to overturn Roe. And even then, even if they appoint her, you still have Roberts and Alito on the court. I'm not convinced they will vote to overturn Roe versus Wade. But let's say in our wildest imagination, 2019, somehow a case is expedited to the Supreme Court next year. This new justice is there, and they come down with a ruling of June of 2019 that we are overturning Roe versus Wade. What happens? Do you know what happens there?
Yes.
The issue.
Yeah, I know what's going to happen. Go ahead.
No, the issue returns to the states. Abortion hasn't ended. It's just returned to where it always should have been and stayed. This is what we've been fighting down here in Oklahoma. This is why we ran a candidate who is not pro-life, by the way. He ran as an abolitionist, and there is a big difference between the two, and we'll do a show to talk more about those differences. Make no mistake about it. If you're pro-life, you really need to become an abolitionist. You need to understand that regulating abortion is immoral. Thinking it to be a victory is really embracing an immoral victory. Where pro-life ideology and strategy says we are going to tell you when, where, and how you can murder somebody. But you can still murder them. You just can't murder them after 20 weeks. You can't murder them with certain instruments. You can't murder them with certain techniques. But as long as they're 20 weeks or younger, you can murder them. Folks, I don't embrace that anymore. I used to, but then somebody helped me realize how bad that was. And the reason I was embracing that was because I didn't believe we had the power to stop anything, because I believed we had to wait for the Supreme Court to tell us we could. If he appoints that woman and she finds a 5-4 majority and they overturn it, it'll go back to the states. And some states will abolish abortion 100%. They will criminalize it. You will go to jail. In Oklahoma, we will criminalize abortion in Oklahoma. If you try to have one, you will be arrested and charged with murder. Some states won't do that. Some states will keep it perfectly legal. But that's what federalism is. It allows distinction and diversity of thought. That doesn't mean I would agree with California doing it, but I don't live in California. I live in Oklahoma. I'll let the Californians figure that out, and I'll try to do my best to influence their thinking. But make no mistake about it, if Roe versus Wade is overturned, it just goes back. What we advocate here, certainly on the Mark and Suzanne show, and what I've been advocating for a decade now, is that the states must reassert their authority now. You have the authority. This is rethinking government. This is taking the paradigm off that says all big decisions come out of Washington, D.C., and changing your paradigm to say, in this one arena, the people of Oklahoma are going to take back power, and they are going to say no to Washington, D.C. Once they get back control of their borders, Oklahoma, I'm then going to advocate for further decentralization of government, all the way down to the county level. And then only there having police and judges. That's it. Got to change our thinking, folks. Jeff?
Yeah, well, I just have a thought on this. How many states now have, at the very least, medical marijuana, and how many have recreational marijuana?
Yeah.
It's up in the 20s now.
Yep.
So how is that any different than Roe versus Wade?
Right.
There's no difference. The states have figured out, you know what? We're going to have medical marijuana, or we're going to have recreational marijuana. And you know what? The federal law, Who cares? We're the state. We're going to do it. So how is that any different than a state saying abortion is illegal? It's murder in the state of Oklahoma. There's no difference.
None. No, Jeff. This was one of Dan's arguments. If Colorado can defy government over pot, certainly Oklahoma can defy the federal government over the murder of an innocent baby. Folks, this is where we have to go. And this is why, I'm excited that you joined us here today on the Mark and Suzanne show. Again, Suzanne's out today. Her son is having surgery, and we're going to continue to pray that all goes well there. And I'll hear a report at some point. But this is why we're doing the show. This is why Jeff does his show. This is why this network is here. It is to push the boundaries of status quo thinking, because status quo thinking changes absolutely nothing. If you really think that the red team is better than the blue team, you don't understand the problem. And actually, not only do you not understand the problem, you're part of the ongoing problem. We have to change our thinking here. We actually do have to get to real limited government. We actually have to cut the power of government substantially. Paine had it right. Government at its best is a necessary evil. Government at its worst will murder you and take stuff from you. We're much closer to that kind of government. Don't pound your chest and think you're free, folks. Don't think you're part of this big free country. As Jeff just elucidated earlier in the show, don't pay your property taxes. See how free you are. Don't wear your seatbelt today. See how free you are. You're not as free as you think. So don't be so prideful and run around beating your chest talking about we're the freest country in the world. Relatively speaking to China and North Korea, we're free, sure. But you're not as free as you think you are. You need to examine what real freedom looks like. Real freedom comes when government is tiny and really has very little to do with your life, almost nothing. That's when you're free. And that's when we can celebrate me going to Lowe's today and buying my toilet bowl flapper so it stops leaking, voluntarily having the cashier say, hello. I say, hey, how you doing? She says, fine, how are you? I give her money, I walk out, and everybody's happy, and government had nothing to do with it. That is actually the state of nature, folks. That's the state of nature, because it happens all the time, millions of times every single day. Voluntary transactions, they will happen. They are happening. They have happened. And it's not because of government. Don't give them that credit. The state of nature, Aristotle actually had it right. We don't want to war with each other. We want to trade. We want to barter. We want to live in community with each other. The entity that screws that up most of the time, guess who? It begins with the letter G. I'll let you fill in the rest. So, folks, I think as you leave this show today and you begin to ponder some of the things we've talked about, I hope that you'll not just react and say, Kreslin, you big dummy, we have to have 3 branches of government. That's from God. I hope you'll really stop that. Ponder what we talked about. Ponder the ideas I threw out there. Debate with me on Facebook. Go to my Facebook page, Facebook.com/Mark Kreslins. Tell me I'm wrong about not having a legislature. Tell me I'm wrong about not having a executive branch. Debate. Let's talk about this. But by all means, think about these ideas. These are important days. It's important we shift our paradigm. And I'll leave you with that, folks. I look forward to visiting with you next week, having Suzanne back in the chair with us. So until next week, and I hope you have a great weekend. I'm Mark. She's Suzanne. You have a blessed day.